Andrea, I don't know if you're talking to us, but you're on mute.
I'm sorry. I'm going
I
to
don't know if you were on the phone or.
No, I didn't realize that I'd muted myself. All right. Thank you all for joining us. We're still waiting for a couple more people, but in the meantime, we will let's get started, and they can join us when they come for the sake of time. Thank you all very much for being here. This is the first in our new CEO series, where we invite an executive from a key sector to talk about how their sector of activity has been affected by the COVID-19 crisis and how they're adjusting and adapting, and some of the key roles that they're playing in the economy and the development during this time. So thank you very much to Celine Golberger, who was the first to accept this invitation. Celine is the Vice President and Head of U.S. Medical Affairs for AbbVie. Needless to say, she is very busy these days, and has a lot of interesting work. So I would like to turn it over to you. Just a couple housekeeping points. We are recording this session. Celine is going to give a brief presentation and has asked that it be a pretty casual discussion format. So if you have questions, feel free to raise them as she's presenting. And we'll also take a series of questions at the end of her presentation and continue the discussion. So feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question during a presentation or at the end. If you prefer that I ask the question, just put it in the chat, and I will field the questions at the end. Thank you all again for being here, and I will turn it over to Celine. Thank you again.
Oh, hi, everyone. Yeah, so it's meant to be a casual discussion. I'm not here to represent AbbVie like a corporation. I'm more here to share my experience being part of the healthcare system in a very unique role, being in the pharma industry. I lead a team in AbbVie. I lead the team of scientists that call in medical affairs that is facing customers, meaning healthcare providers, payers, pharmacists in the field, and driving some research for the U.S. affiliates. And as you can imagine, COVID hit us quite a bit in the multiple fronts. Like it hit a lot of industries and people and everybody, I guess, around the world. So it's really meant to be a discussion. I have just a few talking points, and I would welcome any question at any moment in time. And I can read the chat. So, if you have questions in the chat, that will work too. So I just thought that the COVID crisis kind of had multiple layers of implications for a corporation like mine. In different kind of buckets. One is the treatments, because at the end of the day, our business is to create and provide medication to the world. And so when you have a new disease coming up, the first thing you think about is how can we help and how can we try to treat it. Either what I call acute treatment treats the symptoms and help the relief patients that have the disease, or in this case, the preventive treatment is very key. And for example, the race to the vaccine is very key. So that's the first bucket. The second bucket is how can we help as being one of the, probably one of the most profitable sector in the industry. How can we help the communities face this crisis that's kind of unprecedented? How can we, help with some donation, support the global and the local communities? And then the third bucket is we're an employer like any other. How do we manage our people? And also, as one of our business is essential, how do we ensure that the patients that require to receive our medication can get to it, and how we manage the supply chain of our medication? Those are kind of the three buckets I wanted to touch on, but we can go as well wherever you want with your questions. So first, the treatment part. Which is pretty exciting, is, how do you think about, so you have something coming up, you have no idea what that beast is, nobody knows, really the virus, how it spreads, what kind of symptom we should expect, how it works in the system, and we learn as we go. So how is this international efforts are coming together to try to get a medication as fast as possible out there. So the first thing that we've done, and I think all the pharma company in the world has done, is screen the assets, so the product, the medication we have already in-house. So either on the market, on our what we sell on the shelves, you know, or are currently tested for other disease, or at any step in the development of a medication, looking at those medication and assets and see if they could potentially work for that disease based on what we know so far about the virus. So I think every pharma has done that, and we've seen also use from physicians everywhere in the world, like testing whatever they can think of. So we saw the Plaquenil example in France, for example, taking off quite a bit, and a lot of discussion about should we use Plaquenil for the disease or not. And in our case, we had 2 drugs that had been tested for that. One is a drug that's used in HIV, and it's an anti-protease for HIV virus that's been on the market forever. And as this this coronavirus has as well a protease, that may work. So there was some indication in vitro that it could work. So we thought about testing it, and we had a lot of requests from the external world to have the drug to be able to test it. So a lot of physicians locally will come to us and say, I think it could work. Can you give me the drugs? And I would like to test that on my patients. So a lot of this external partnership. And then we have another drug that is working more, that is used in actually in leukemia, so in cancer patients, that is blocking steps in the inflammation process. You may know that the coronavirus has it's hitting the body in two ways. One is the more typical virus kind of infection, but then at some point for some patients, the most severe one, there is what it's called a cytokine storm that is happening. So there is a massive inflammation of the body that's happening, and especially in the lung, and that will create the respiratory issues that's seen in some patients, and the fact that they require to be in ICUs with ventilators, and that lead to death in a lot of those cases. So we are trying to attack the beast by 2 angles. One, the virus, like stopping the virus replication, and one is stopping the consequences of the infection. And so this drug that is on the market for leukemia could work in the inflammation part of the most severe cases, and so that drug is also being tested. So what we've seen happening is people desperate, physicians desperate to try to help their patients, and governments being desperate to try to help their population, and coming after every pharmaceutical company that has a drug that could work, asking for donation of those drugs to enable research to happen everywhere. So we've seen tons of that, and we've been part of a lot of those. And then you have partnership, like the WHO organization launching like massive clinical trials to test some of those drugs to have a quick answer of are they actually effective. So we've been asked as well to sponsor some of those massive research and be part of those, and either sponsoring through money or through donation of the drug or both. So we've been part of that as well. And there is a third bucket, which is the industry consortium, so multiple pharmaceutical companies coming together and kind of sharing some resources to, again, try to maximize the efficiency of the research. So a lot of research going on, a lot of partnership with the external world, a lot of support to local research like clinical trials, and a lot of work done internally on recycling drugs we have, or in some companies triggering some new research to be able to provide the vaccine, for example, and provide treatment. So that's a big bucket of what how COVID has impacted us, and obviously that's core to our business. So it's a place where we're very interested in in being, and that kept us quite busy and keeping us quite busy right now. And part of it as well is also, well, I'll touch on that later. Anyway, the second big bucket is supporting the community. So nobody has faced that at that level before. So as we saw the wave of infection coming up, we could see the need for more hospital setting, more respirator, for example, in Europe, those kind of needs. And obviously, we're, as I said, a pretty profitable industry. So we have a lot of initiative to giving back to the community we're in. But that was even, putting steroids with this crisis. So again, an example of AbbVie, but a lot of the big company have done that. AbbVie have given like 35 million to support local communities and global communities. Those 35 millions went to like 3 main organizations. One is Feeding America, which is meant to protect the most vulnerable, the elderly, and patients and people that cannot, access food or essential supplies. So I don't know why these slides keeps moving up. Maybe I have put a timer without knowing it on my slide deck. Sorry for that. Then another bucket of funds went to an organization that meant to create field hospital, like to supplement the local capacity. So for example, they deployed field hospital in New York City, in Chicago, in Los Angeles, those like big areas where they were expecting a surge of patients. So we provided money for them to be able to create those 20 additional field hospitals. And then the third one is another organization that helps supply oxygen concentrator, ventilator, and PPEs for Europe. There was a lack of masks and those kind of protective equipment, for example, for healthcare provider in Europe. So we helped relieve that. So that was one thing that the company has done pretty quickly. Plus, they also saved some money for local needs and local organization that will ask for help. And then they also did it through the employee giving campaign. In the US, most of the big companies have a matching program where when you give to a cause, then they will match your contribution. Usually they do that in a 101, at least in AbbVie, they do that 101. So if I give $100, then AbbVie will give another $100 to this organization, charitable organization. And for COVID, they say a 2-to-1 match. So they will kind of doubling up what we were giving, like tripling up what we were giving, what the employee will give to those organizations involved in the relief of COVID-19 consequences. So that's another big bucket of what those big corporations can do with the money they have to help the community fight the crisis. And then the third one is, how do you manage patients and employees? Obviously, we are in a very special business. We are dealing with patient's health. So ensuring that there is no disruption in the supply chain of the medication that people need to receive for their health and survival is very important. So that was extremely difficult in a situation where some of those borders were closed, where the demand on some of our products, especially the Calitra, which is the anti-HIV drug, had a peak in demand because people wanted to use it to treat COVID. We wanted to ensure that our HIV patients will receive that drug and will not have a shortage of it. So the daily management of the supply chain, it was also enormous effort and takes a lot of operational muscles to ensure. So that was a big stressor in the system. Ensuring that we address as well all the questions we receive from our healthcare providers, so all the physicians out there, the patients, the payers, everybody that is using our drug. Is it safe to use your drug in a COVID patient? Some of our drugs are impacting the immune system. So they will have questions about, for patients that are taking it, are they going to be more susceptible to be infected? So those kind of questions. So being sure that as fast as possible, we can provide the information we add, which, at the beginning was not that much, and ensure that this line of communication is very free and open, and we keep everybody up to date on what we know about the safety of our drug and how it's maintained the safety of the patients. And then all the questions about our employees. How do we ensure the safety of our employees? As I said, our business is an essential business, so we do have employees that are in the manufacturing site, actually in the factory that are making the drugs, or the labs that are required to be at work every day. So all the procedures of how do you protect them, what do you expect of them, how do you ensure social distancing in the manufacturing line, how do what kind of gloves, mask, all those questions. What happens if one of them is sick? How do you trace the case around these employees? All of those questions, of course, that any big employer have to face. We had to face that too. And now, as we are approaching the reopening of the United States, we are facing those decisions on what criteria do we apply to say it's safe for someone to go back, visit physician in the hospital and have, educational program with them. When is it okay? Where is it okay? How can that be okay? So tons of questions with little answer, and trying to, do the best we can in this world where we don't know a lot of, about actually what's going to happen. And even we don't know a lot about the disease itself, and if you got the virus, are you protected or not? All those questions, we have no idea. So those are kind of the main topics that we are dealing with right now with this crisis. So that's basically what I wanted to share with you. Oh, and then I forgot to say that, but in one of the questions about patients, obviously, especially in the US, a lot of people have lost their jobs, so they may not afford anymore paying for their medication. And obviously, we don't want that to be a barrier for them to remain on their treatment. A lot of the medication we have in AbbVie are chronic treatments, so that you have to take in the long run. So we had programs that were very quickly launched to help them and say, if you cannot pay for your drug anymore, let us help you. So all of those patient assistance programs were also put in place very quickly to ensure that there is no discontinuation in the treatment of the patients. And then same thing for employees. Like if an employee is facing a personal situations that financially put him or her at risk, AbbVie has launched this. I mean, we always had an employee assistance fund, but I think they bolster it, and they also ensure that the employee will have an answer, like the case will be turned very much more quickly, so that people can have a relief much more quickly if they need to be helped for anything related to the COVID impact. So that's another program that they launched for the employees. So those were kind of the topic I had in mind for that presentation, and just giving you an idea of how that COVID situation has impacted our business. So happy to entertain any questions that you may have, or anything that's on your mind about that topic.
Thank you, Celine. We can open it up for questions now. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask anything you have to ask.
Hi, Nicolas Visuel speaking. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're very far away.
Put the microphone near to my mouth. Yeah, a question about the treatment you are providing.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have so far a return of experience on the success rate of these treatments?
Oh, so We don't. And so that's also what was interesting in this, in what has happened, is that people will start using treatment kind of widely without any scientific data to support it, other than kind of in vitro testing, or, but basically no clinical data. And it was very empirical kind of pragmatic decisions. The studies are ongoing. They just start, I mean, they're not just starting. The WHO has a big, massive trial that's ongoing across Europe that should read out probably towards the end of the month. So like late May, early June, that will inform some of those strategies that were used very early on, like on the Plaquenil, for example, and Kelytra, which is the HIV drug. But the trials are ongoing. So right now we have a lot of small trials that were done from physicians directly in their hospitals, a lot coming from China, some coming from Europe. But we don't have yet a big program that has read out. And you may have followed, but there is one drug that is also a drug that was developed by Gilead in the SARS, for the SARS disease, that never came out, never been marketed because it didn't work out enough. But that had very early data showing some efficacy. And if you have followed the news, these drugs got approved by the FDA in a matter of days. So what's happening is that as soon as there is some indication that there is some clinical efficacy, the FDA and the local health agency are very much willing to approve those drugs and make them available to the public as fast as possible. And the company donated all their supply of drugs so that the population can have access to it as fast as possible. But so far, we don't have a lot of reliable, robust clinical trials that have read out yet. So we don't really know what works and what doesn't.
Thank you. I got another question.
Yeah.
If I may, if no one else has. Did you see a shift in some way to assess and monitor the patients? Meaning that, do you see some providers and doctors using more remote diagnostic tools and stuff like this?
Absolutely. In the US, massively. So in the US, a lot of specialties that were deemed like not essential. So for example, one of our drugs is treating psoriasis, so a dermatologic condition. The dermatology practices are almost all closed. And they are doing telemedicine for the most part. The rheumatologist, same thing. So there is a lot of physicians that had to close their practice and are seeing patients through telemedicine. And they will go to their office like maybe once a week to see the very urgent patient or the one that they cannot deal with through like video conferencing. So we did see a lot of shift in practice during this time, and still now. We don't know what's going to happen after, when things go back to normal. I don't know if we're going to go back to the normal we know, or if they're going to keep doing some of these telemedicine consultation. But that's what we've seen. We've seen as well a drop in patient care. So what we've seen across I think all specialty, at least in our business, but I think it's probably true across all the specialties, is that patients that were already on medication continue their treatment, but we see a massive drop in new patients starting new treatment, meaning that probably, if you have a disease that can wait, patients stayed home and didn't seek care. So that's pretty obvious that people didn't go to the hospital or didn't go to a doctor if they didn't have to. And that probably delayed some start of care. Yeah. And I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know when people will feel comfortable to come back again, because right now, the practices that are open, you have to wait in your car. there is a max number of patients in the waiting room. So it's certainly a different field than what you had before. And we don't know for how long we'll have to have those social distancing restriction. It might be up to having a vaccine. And a vaccine, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, but I would bet that a reliable vaccine will not be on the market until a year from now. So I don't know how long we're gonna have to, wear masks and all these things. If this virus is like the flu, we should have a relief during the summertime, and then it should go back in the fall. We don't know if that's what's going to happen or not, but that's one of the hypotheses, that's going to get better until it gets worse. The other hypothesis is going to just remain at this level that we have right now. I think the countries are doing better in controlling the infection. What you see in France right now, I mean, is that infection is under control, and when you have new cases, they can isolate it much easier. They know where it is, and they just send everybody home from that community, which stop the spread. That's the hypothesis. That's what they want to do. At the scale of the US, I don't know what's going to happen. But we've seen a difference in practice as well as patient behavior during that time, for sure.
Thank you.
Celine, I have a question here from Dimitri, one of our participants.
Mm-hmm.
Are the studies approached differently in the US versus in France? And have there been any lessons learned from China that you're aware of?
From a study standpoint, I think the studies are approached about the same across the globe. It's pretty well defined. But you have I'm a physician, I have a cohort of patients, I'm just testing it kind of studies, and then you have the more robust one where you have multiple group of treatments, you randomize the patients, I mean, you have a more robust methodology used. Those are kind of more the two type of studies, but they are done about the same across the globe. And as the pandemic goes on, we can see that the study are ongoing right now in Europe have trouble enrolling patients because I mean, it's a good news because there is less infection. So now there is more research done in the US than other countries because of where the infection is. But they are run about the same across the globe. Is there any learning from China? For sure, I think the government, I mean, as much as I do by just following the news, I think the governments are watching what everybody else is doing and adjusting their health policy based off of that. With China, we never know, there's always the question of, do we have the full set of data or not? I think that they've been very good at and not just the Chinese, everyone has been very good with disclosing the data as soon as they have it. So as usually when you do a clinical trial, it takes time. And then when you get the data, it takes time to get the analysis done, interpret, and then publish in a journal, in a scientific journal. That timeline has been crushed with COVID, where as soon as the data is in the hand of the scientists, it's out, which helps a lot the community to build on each piece of information that we get from all of those little things, experiments, to build. What was interesting to watch is that we built international, global knowledge bases based off of all of those little experiments and the sharing that was happening live and still happening live. We started with knowing nothing. We know slightly more now. We still don't know everything, but everybody it's an open sourcing kind of model of, let's think about this issue all together from a public health standpoint, from a treatment standpoint, from a understanding of the natural course of the disease standpoint. That's how I would say. I don't know if that addressed your questions, but.
Thank you. Are there other questions?
I have a question. This is Miriam. Hi,
Mhm.
Celine. I was wondering, because of all the attention put in the fight against coronavirus, how is it affecting other clinical trials that
Yeah.
your company and others company, and probably it's going to delay those clinical trials?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good point. I forgot that on my list. But absolutely, the clinical trial, all the research that was ongoing has been slowed down by the infections because patients are not going back to see the doctor. So it certainly has put a lot of programs on hold. So for example, we very quickly we had to decide, okay, everything that hasn't started will not start until we go back to some sort of normal. So all of those programs that were ready to go have been put on hold. The ones that were ongoing, we're trying to maintain the continuity as much as possible. But depending on so if you have for example, a chemotherapy trial where a patient has cancer and you know what, it's a matter of life or death, they will go to the doctor and we're still gonna, those were still pretty active. Again, when it's a disease where it's a little bit less life-threatening kind of situation, the impact is pretty big. So overall, I see that as the scale of my company, but I'm sure it's the same across every company. So probably some of the research on other topic and other area have been slowed down. If it's 2 months of delay, it's okay. If that thing lasts for a year, it's going to be a bigger, of course, bigger impact. I don't think there is any impact right now. I don't think that there is any impact from a money standpoint, because the other impact you can think of is, okay, if we sell less drug, we have less money to reinvest in the R&D, and that may slow down as well some investment in the research. I haven't seen that because those companies, maybe that may have happened in like smaller companies, but those big ones, they have enough, you know, shoulder to handle those kind of situations. So fortunately, that hasn't happened.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Hello, Celine. How are you? Thank you for this information. This is really interesting. This is Janine Vega. I wanted to ask you, what is your impression on the response and the coordination of the response? This is in the clinical level, because there are many, like you're mentioning, there are many different types of treatment that are possible. But what will be the best institution to coordinate the different efforts? Because maybe we are passing along important information just because we are not talking to the right people.
Yeah, that's a tricky question. You would love, I mean, I would love that there was some sort of central body. I don't know if the WHO or whatever organization play that kind of central role of coordinating all of these efforts. But that's not the case, to be honest. And part of it is because it's, I mean, it's a private business. It's a health. So we all feel like it should be kind of a public good, but the truth of the matter is that it's not. So there is some financial thing that's happening. Part of it is also because it's just messy. I mean, even for, I mean, everything is just messy. It's messy in the US because the US is not a centralized country by design. And so you have all of those local things that are happening. But even it's messy, even in like centralized country like France that is super centralized, it's messy. So I would love that there is some coordination. I think the WHO was trying to do so, but you have so many different interests in play that it's tough to coordinate everyone. Even if I think all the private partners in the COVID situation have been pretty good and just, you know, giving everything for free and just, you know, help the efforts with kind of no second thoughts. I mean, you see, Gilead gave remdesivir drug all of their supply to the federal government here in the US for distribution to the local institution, and that has been completely messed up. Like the local hospital don't have access to it. It's a big mess. So yeah, I'm with you. I would love that there is something, some sort of centralized organization, but that's not the case. Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
But what do you think about NIH or BARDA? Do you know, are they trying to coordinate something at a larger level?
They do. Yes, they try. They try. I mean, NIH has done massive trials. I mean, starting massive trials and try to coordinate the research. Again, the COVID situation is a tough one because we started with not knowing a lot. I mean, much. So it's not like you're trying to find a cure to something that you know where you know the evolution of the disease, you know the pathophysiology. I mean, you have information. Here we have zero information. So we were in the same time discovering what it does to the body and trying to understand the scientific, causes to it and triggering some research. So I think that's also what's making it even more messy, is that we are trying to solve everything at just the same time. Yes, the NIH has some initiative, BARDA as well. Do I feel like it's going to be the be all and all? No, I don't think so. I don't think so, but I don't think that we will find the treatment that we're testing right now. Again, it's recycling, for example, Kelytra, that is tested in a lot of trials, and is one of the things that people think may work. When you look at the in vitro data, based off of the in vitro data, we would have never started a development based off of this data. It's too weak. So it just shows that we're kind of desperate to try anything, to find anything that could just shorten the duration of the disease. But I don't think we're going to find a cure anytime soon. I think it's going to take time to understand, again, the pathophysiology of the disease before we find something that really can impact the disease, the virus replication or something. And I think the best shot is probably vaccine. With viruses anyway, the best shot is most of the time vaccine. There is few examples where we are able to cure virus infection like AbbVie, but the vaccine is probably where the hope is. But what we don't know is that, is it a virus that's going to mutate every year and you have to vaccinate differently every year? We don't know. We have no answer right now.
Aisha, did you have a question?
I have a question. You mentioned a drug used for leukemia at the beginning of your speech. Can we have the name of it?
Yeah, it's called Imbruvica.
Invorvica?
Yeah, Imbruvica.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. It's tested right now. We are launching we as a company are launching a development program, like a classic one, where we just go in different phases of testing to see if it may work. We have some in vitro, and a little bit of indication it might, so we are testing it.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So one of the questions we are asking ourselves is, what kind of access, if we have indication that it may work like in a more serious way, then while we finish up the trials, how can we provide the drug, and those kind of questions. And I don't know how. We don't have the answer yet, but we're working on it.
I got another question, Nicolas. Speak louder, sorry.
That's good.
We've heard that the WHO is struggling to coordinate all the trials and researches, etc. But isn't there a standard to analyze the data they all collect in all the countries? I mean, the way they analyze the outputs of the trials, of the researches are all the same, or they are different? Is there standards to do that?
There is no institution that does that for anybody. It's kind of you're on your own.
Okay.
You look at the data and you're on your own. what goes close to it is that, for example, in the US is the CDC. So it's the organization that are in charge of public health. Those are the ones that at the end will probably provide some guidance. I don't know if they're going to provide like treatment guidance, but at least some protection guidance. One day, so the way it works usually is that, you know, everybody's running their trials, they publish it. The health agency, so the FDA or the European agency or those kind of agencies will look at each drug individually and say go, no go, good enough to get to have an indication for the disease or not. As I said, in this case, they will go fast. So it's not like the classic 1 year to wait until they approve it. It might, if there is data that is good enough, they will just approve it and provide it. And then it's going to be scientific society, so the Society of the Infectious Disease Specialists publishing guidelines and saying, okay, if your patient has this, you know, a mild COVID, here is what you should do. If it's a moderate one, or you have that type of symptom or this type of symptoms, here is what you should be using. So that's usually how it works. I don't expect WHO to provide guidance, but you know, in this situation they might. Would people follow the guidance of the WHO? That I'm not 100% sure. I mean, WHO is good to manage like the global public health, and that's how it's usually used. I don't know that it's going to be used for like local treatment decision. I'm not sure of that. I don't know.
We have another question from Dimitri. This is you know, quite the topic of the week. What do you think about the hype surrounding hydrochloroquine?
Yeah, so who knows? So we should know more in a few weeks, end of the month, early June, when the WHO trial will gonna read out. The big experiment that actually gonna give us the answer is the WHO trial. So it has, I think, 5 arms on the trial. So they're gonna test hydroxychloroquine, so plaquenil. They're gonna try Skelitra, so the anti-HIV drug alone or in combination with interferon. I think they have an arm of standard of care, so what you would do normally in this kind of situation. I forgot which is the 5th one. I think the 5th is the remdesivir, but they may have stopped it now that's approved. I don't know. So the Gilead drug. They meant to enroll 10,000 patients across mostly European countries. There was a French study that was ongoing called Discovery that enrolled, I think, close to 1,000 patients. This study has the same design, so it's going to be rolling out into the big WHO trials. And as I said, I mean, as far as I know, I mean, I'm not in the WHO, but as far as I know, towards the end of the month, we should have the first readout of the trial. It's a trial where they're going to have interim analysis, so they're going to look at the data when they have enough patients, and then decide if there is a treatment arm that looks fantastically well. So if hydroxychloroquine is fantastic, they're going to say it, and they're going to stop the arm, and they're just going to, you know, use the data to get it approved, and you know, that will help with getting that to everyone. If one of the arm is not working, like hydroxychloroquine show no benefit, they will stop it and say, you know, let's just stop, it's useless. And if it's kind of, we don't really know yet, they're going to keep going. So that's what we're going to have by the end of the month. But honestly, I will not bet on hydroxychloroquine until I have the results of that trial. I think that taking it in prevention, like someone does right now, I don't think it's really a good idea. But you know, I'm a psychiatrist by training, so I'm not an infectious disease, so I don't. It's like a little bit out of my area of expertise.
Thank you.
But we should have more. Wait 2-3 weeks, and we may have more information. Having said that, my parents-in-law got the disease, and both of them were put on plaquenil, but so you know, that's what they do in France, right? I don't know if it helped.
Sorry, I have one more question. What would you think would be the best way for French companies to partner with AbbVie?
Oh, like you mean biotechs or stuff like that?
Yes.
So AbbVie has a huge arm that is on business development, and they are really like scouting everything that's out there in our area of interest to see whatever is interesting and be ready to partner or buy or whatever is the partnership. So I think that's probably the way. So AbbVie is usually very present in like all of the conventions that are meant to be about those kind of partnerships, because we're always in the look of new innovation coming from the outside that we can bring in-house, help, finish up the development and help market. So that's probably one of the avenue that's probably the easiest. That would be my bet. So if you go on the website, on the AbbVie.com, I'm sure there is a huge page on the business development and contact there if you're aware of biotechs that are interested in this partnership, because they're always on the look for innovation.
Okay. Thank you very much. I guess you're attending Bio Digital this year.
I mean, I'm not, but the business development folks are in all of those places. Yeah.
So I think we will have a match then. Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions? We have a few more minutes.
Yeah, I got one. Did this crisis make AbbVie think about other market segments they could tackle, they could go?
So it's an interesting one. I mean, I think it's make us think about AbbVie historically has been a big company in the HIV treatment, especially at the beginning when we're starting to having drugs. At that time, it was not AbbVie, it was Abbott. AbbVie is a spin-off from Abbott, the pharmaceutical part of Abbott. So I think it's probably triggered the company to rethink about, should we invest in this infectious disease area and look for something for this virus. So I think those discussions are ongoing, but those are kind of potentially like places. I don't know that. Other than that, I don't see really how we could change. I mean, the impact on our daily business is like anybody else, right? We run our meeting virtually. We engage our customer virtually. So the use of digital tools and stuff like that is much more important. And now that we have used it and with some successes, would that stick? And would we change the way we engage our customer? That may be one way to like a lasting impact on the company. Redirecting some funds to some different research might be one impact on the company. But those are kind of the key ones that I see. I don't know. I mean, there is some learning that we had, like anybody else, on how to manage a crisis, how to maybe, I'm not close to the supply chain world, but they may have learned something in the experience, like to make supply chain better or more efficient or more reactive. I don't know. Certainly the digital part of the experience is something that make us think about, can we run more of those? Can we be more open to, remote working? Can we, all of those questions? But I think like most of the big company or any corporation.
Thank you.
Any final questions? Celine, there is a follow-up question on the hydrochloroquine topic. If it is a solution, is there a supply base that's ready to be scaled up? And if so, where would that come from? Who?
Yeah, that I don't know. I believe it's a generic drug, right? I mean, it should be pretty. I mean, I'm not a specialist by any means, but I would think that it should be not that difficult to have generic company involved in manufacturing that through generic companies. If you need to scale to like million of users, because I think it's a generic drug now, so that would be my way of thinking about it, but I'm not privy to any kind of information on that. Certainly what we see, so what happened is all the governments around the globe are, when there is a drug that shows any signal of potential efficacy, they requested supply. So they kind of seize our stocks almost, because we had to face that with some of our drugs. And so I'm assuming that the government have the power to actually seize some of the stock and ensure that there is proper supply. And that's where I think organization like WHO has probably a role to play as well. My 2 cents, but I'm not a specialist of the supply side.
Interesting. Okay. Anyone else? I have a question, if you don't mind. And I know that you just said that you weren't a specialist of the supply side, so now I'm asking you this question. But so I think the optimistic estimates is that if there's a vaccine, it wouldn't be until end of this year, beginning of next year. But realistically, when would that be available to anybody? I mean, I'm assuming that that's something that would go to the most vulnerable populations first, and then there'd be some sort of order of priority. When do you think that would be?
Yeah, I don't know, but I would think that for this disease, they're gonna ramp up the production as fast as possible. I don't know if they're gonna go as far as having partnership with different, companies, or if they're gonna give that to one. I mean, I don't know, but for sure, whomever, I mean, all the companies that are racing to find a vaccine know that they all know that the volume of demand is going to be enormous. So they're probably, as they move forward in the process, they're probably already planning for a massive supply. Would that cover 6 billion individuals? Might not be, but they know that it's going to be massive demand. So I would expect that they can cover the population relatively fast, but I mean, that it's not always easy, because those drugs are not very easy to produce. It's all a bit complicated. So the scaling of production sites and production manufacturing sites is not that easy. So they may partner. I don't honestly have no visibility on that. For sure, they are aware of demand.
Yeah. Aisha, did you have a last question?
Yeah, I just have a last question. I mean, it's a tricky one. When we will have the vaccine, shall we know exactly the contents of it?
What do you mean, like what's in there?
Yeah. Will
I
that
mean,
be transparent?
Oh yeah, it has to. So in any drug that is approved for use in the main market, I mean, in all the market, I would think, you have a label that goes with it where you have exactly explained what's in there. So you would have the detail of what's made up, how that thing is made up. Yeah. So you always have that. You always have product information in every single drug that is approved by an health authority. That's why we have health authorities, to ensure that it's transparent.
Yeah, because we hear some things like nanoparticles. Did you hear about that?
No, I'm not tracking all the all the news. But I mean, that's why we have health agencies. I mean, that's their job, to ensure the safety of the public. So they are assessing the testing, the production, the quality. I mean, it's a pretty thorough process. So, you know, we trust them for everything else. I don't see any reason to not trust them about that vaccine, to be honest. And the companies that are racing to find one are big companies. I mean, they are solid companies. So I would really rely on their process quality, insurance, and everything. Yeah, I would not have any doubt personally, but I'm always biased in that thing. But I would not have any doubt.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We are just about out of time, unless there are any last pressing questions. If not, a big thank you to Celine.
Thank you, thank you, guys.
We will. This session has been recorded. We will get the recording, a link to the recording, up on our website by tomorrow, and we will send a follow-up email to everybody who participated today. So thank you again, Celine, for taking time out of your probably crazy busy schedule right now. But it was really interesting to hear from you, and I'm sure that you might even get some follow-up questions later on.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not a complete specialist, but you know, I can share my thoughts.
Yeah, good. And thanks to everybody for being here. We have more of these coming up over the next few weeks, so please check out our website and our list of events. And if you have any questions for us, feel free to contact me or Molly. If you'd like to be connected with anybody who was in the audience or on this call, please let me know as well. Thank you again, and have a good rest of the afternoon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.